living wage in Nicaragua is $360 a month. Minimum wage is $240 a month. Average is around $340 a month. So on the average, people are making almost enough to live, but very, very poor. Okay, are we having trouble getting the next slide to come up? Okay. Nicaragua is organized by department rather than states. They're smaller, of course. Nicaragua's not all that big to begin with. There are 15 of them, each one with its own capital city, just like the state has a capital city. The capital cities of the departments, depending on where it is in Nicaragua, can be very poor itself. All of them have hospitals. Outside of the cities, there are no hospitals. That people, this was working, of course, before service. Which means, of course, that people, if they need to go to hospital, the first time I was there in 2014, our host, she was pregnant, 8 months. And so we were talking about, well, what happens when it's time to have a baby? She said, well, when it gets close, when the doctor tells me I need to, I will go into San Theo and stay with some family in San Theo until I have a baby. Because it's not that far, it's only like 130 minutes drive. But if you don't have a car, well, rely on, out in rural areas, they rely on public transport buses. They rely on walking, horses, catch rides all the time with other people. If you happen to have a car, you will always have a car. Now it's different in the city. They all have, well, they don't all have cars, but it seems like they all have. Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, so, so in the city, Managua is the main city. It is the capital of the whole country, also the capital of their district. There's tons of street vendors. This guy, I took this picture in 2014 when I was there. He's still out there doing this now. Same kid. He's a little taller, but it's the same kid. This is a little blurry. This is down by their lakefront. They have like a park and amusement park, and it's very popular, or very heavily populated night with a lot of food trucks. Okay, next slide. The government plaza in Managua. Now, this was from 2014. And I want to draw your attention to this section right here. And you can see there's people just strolling around and enjoying themselves. In 2018, there was 2 uprisings. The government was going to change Social Security, their version of Social Security. The students didn't like it. They protested against the government. It got very ugly very fast. We hadn't been since. And it wasn't COVID, it was a huge uprising. The political situation got so untenable at that time, it was not safe to practice in Nicaragua. So we went back down there. They have 3 buildings. This one over here, the yellow one, is the People's Mansion. That's supposed to be the governor's house, but right now it's just offices for government officials. Ortega's live somewhere else. The one in the center is the oldest Catholic church in Managua. It was damaged in an earthquake back in the 70s, and unfortunately the capital was since. But they leave it up there. And then so you've got the national, or the People's Palace, the church, and over here, that white building is the National Building. It has a museum and hosts all kinds of classes. Is this not working?
It's not working.
I bet the battery died.
That's my thought too.
Well, maybe I just have it off. How about that? There we go. Okay, so, yeah, so that building is bustling, but this whole plaza, and it's a big plaza, with the graves of some of the Sandinista heroes and tributes to national figures, there's nobody there. When we went this time, instead of people wandering around and visiting and street vendors and stuff, the plaza was pretty much empty, but it was surrounded by local cops. I can't get that to go back in now, who stopped us, asked us what our business was, and then took pictures of us as we wandered around. Because the government is extremely worried about another uprising, and so they've really cracked down. And obviously, they do not want this very moving tribute. It's just gorgeous to their national heroes to be damaged. So the government's gotten very difficult to work with since 2018, they have kicked out about 2,000 non-governmental organizations. Yeah, 2,000. However, Lutheran Church of Faith and Hope has been able to continue to work with them. The government audited them over a course of 5 years. Everything was fine, and one of the auditors told them, "I've never seen a church that does so much for the people." So the audit shows that the church is honest, it's handling its funds correctly, and it's helping people outside the church. It is important that when we're giving to Nicaragua that we do it through the Synod, because anytime they get money in or a gift in or anything, they have to let the government know in advance. So the LCA has those channels made up. The Synod sends it to the LCA, and the LCA sends it on. So it's being handled properly. I couldn't just write a check to the church and send it to Bishop Cathy or to Bishop Victoria, and yeah, that wouldn't be the way to go. So you do want to make sure that you give through the church. Okay, next one. He said it's a land of extremes. There are volcanoes. That is a live volcano there. That one obviously too is live, but you can go right up to the edge of it. And lakes, lots of lakes. Yet, the communities that the church are in are so very, very dry. Some of them are in dry paths. Rural communities, next slide. One of the big projects that had been going on was replacing their ovens with the outdoor stone ovens. This is one of the newer models. It has a smaller wood box. It's insulated, and so it uses about 30% of the wood it used to, so very efficient. Plus, and you can't see the pipe in this picture, it's vented outside of the open air kitchen, so the women are not breathing in the fumes all day from the kitchen. But yeah, open air kitchens, some street life. These are in Somateo when I was there before, because the church has got two communities, one in Somateo, one in Somoto, which I thought was the same town for the longest time and learned that it's not. Next slide. Very, very poor. Okay, so we get out there, we talk about our dirt roads. Yeah, they don't hold a candle to theirs. And that road got even narrower. Just when I didn't think it could get any narrower, it did. Lot of cattle. It's a Brahmin mix that's suited for their weather. Their seasons are, they have two. They have the dry season, which goes from October to May, and the wet season that goes from May to the end of September. There's two parts to the wet season, the early wet season, late wet season. Lately, the early wet season has not been wet. This is a real problem for the farmers because there just hasn't been enough. Now, there's a lot of brick houses, but there's still a lot of houses with thatch and wood as well. Go on, next slide. Okay. We use what is called an accompaniment model with our missions in
both Nicaragua and Cameroon. Accompaniment is we talk to each other. We ask them what they need. We recognize that we are equal partners. And I like that this quote from Bonhoeffer: every Christian community must realize that not only do the weak need the strong, but the strong need the weak. The strong cannot exist without the weak. We learn as much from them as they do from us. Yes, we have more resources and we give generously, but that's not what accompaniment is about. Bishop Victoria told us a story. It was when they also are companions with the Lutheran Church in Germany. And she was in Germany for a conference, and she stopped into the bishop to talk about becoming a companion synod. And he told her that he wasn't really interested. They already had a relationship with a congregation in Africa, and they just didn't have the money for another relationship. He just wasn't interested. And she was furious. She steamed all the way home. She was just very upset, just so mad, she says. Well, it just so happens at the time, the church in Germany was building a new bishop's palace or house or whatever they call it. And so she told all of her congregations that they should take up a special collection for the bishop's house in Germany. And they should write a letter letting them know that they are praying for them, their brothers and sisters in the faith, and here's a little bit to help build their house. The biggest amount she had was $4. I mean, these are very, very poor congregations. But even the poorest of the congregation was able to scrape together a couple of dollars. And so they got these letters with $2, $3, $4, $1. But after that, the bishop understood what she was trying to say about accompaniment, that we are in this together. We help each other in lots of ways, and some of it is beyond financial. And he came to Nicaragua to thank them, and they developed their partnership. There is a room in that palace or house or whatever it is in Germany that is wallpapered with those letters. They kept them because they are part of building not just a building, but of building a relationship. And that's what we're all about, really. We do some stuff, but mostly we are about building relationship. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, the Central Church in Managua is not huge, but I take this picture every time. I love their stained glass over the back door. We worshiped together that first Sunday I was there. Go to the next slide. Jonathan is an amazing young man. He lost his brother. We had a memorial service that night. He led the praise band to serve his mother's memorial service. So, just chairs. Everybody participates in the band. I love we had that memorial service that evening. Some things never change because we got ready to start the memorial service. And that hymn is How Great Thou Art. Some things never change. Funerals start with How Great Thou Art. Now, I also had to smile a little bit because Pastor Katia led that service, and so she had a stole on. And I had wore a stole that we received here from the church in Nicaragua back in maybe 2012, 2013. I wore that. The stole she wore, I'm almost 100% sure, was one that I donated to the church. And so she was wearing my stole. I wore her stole. So it was very cool. Okay. After worship, go back a slide. We'll start that one over again. After worship, we went out and we bought food. We bought gifts for our host family. We bought food. Small bag of oatmeal and masa, 4-pound bags of rice, sugar, beans, some coffee, and a liter of oil. This is the food that's in the emergency food packs that they get when there's been some sort of a disaster like a hurricane or something. And but the emergency food packs are much larger and also include salt, a lighter, a powdered drink, and pasta. Our gift would last 10 days. Emergency food packs is enough for a family of 4 for about a month. And they do that a lot. My first trip there was in 2014 after, I forget which hurricane it was, but one of them that was so devastating. And we spent a lot of time packing food packs to send out into the community. Okay. So then after the service, we headed out to the communities. And our first stop was in El Rancho. It's a small village over a fairly large area connected by dirt roads. There's one pastor in Somoto, Pastor Melba. Everybody else are lay pastors, and she is in charge of all of those communities there. I think there are 17 of them. Okay, now the next one. They had a presentation.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Janelkis Rodera, soy líder de niños de la comunidad del Rodeo. Y hoy los niños tienen preparado un canto.
They prepared a song for us.
Ya vienen mis hermanos, ya vienen, están aquí. Pasen adelante, hermanos, que el Señor los va a recibir. Pasen adelante, hermanos, que el Señor los va a recibir. Bienvenidos sean todos a esta comunidad. Que el Señor les bendiga y les dé su bendición. Que el Señor les bendiga y les dé su bendición. Pasaremos este día glorificando al Señor, cantando todos alegres, unidos en oración.
Okay, you can go on to the next slide. So the church in El Rancho, there were about 35 in worship, plus the 7 of us that came from Managua. It started in Somoto and spread to the villages. Pastor Siliette tells us that during Hurricane Mitch, these communities were ignored in the government relief efforts. And they had heard that the Central Church was helping people with food, and they reached out. The church helped them, and then some of the people who were helped asked the church to come out and form communities. Every community that they're in, they have been invited in. Makes me think of the passage, in Paul where he says, I've heard of your good works. They heard, and so they asked. The members at El Rancho are involved in 3 projects, and we'll talk more about projects in a minute: laying hens, irrigation, and with irrigation farming, and they have a bakery. But their church is mostly outside. There is a little house, but this is covered. They built this with the money from their projects. So before, they would have met in a house. Okay, next slide. The next place we went was Tierra, Colorado. Tierra, Colorado is very remote. It's made up primarily of indigenous people. They have a laying hens project as well, but the area does not have enough water for them to have an irrigation system. 16 families, 2 square kilometers, and it's very, very poor. It moved to a little more central home, so everybody comes from pretty much the same distance. They do have a seed bank, and the seed bank is a cooperative where they have like just small silos. They're like this tall and that big around. And when you get a bucket of seed out of the bank, you plant your food, and then you come back with 2 buckets of seed. And it's just a place to store it that's safe. One of the problems of the hurricane that came through in 2014 is it wiped out their seed stores. So we started helping them build these seed banks so they had a safe place. So even if there's a hurricane, a lot of water, their stores don't get ruined. One of the women, Wendy, who is the one back there with the child on her lap, said that she believes the Lord gives what you need when you need it. And she works for the church when it needs her because God is taking care of her. She's been poor all of her life. She needed an oven. Not knowing of her need, Pastor Melba offered her one of those new ovens that you saw a few slides back. And she just cried. Would you like to have one of the new ovens? And she didn't have an oven at all. And it was definitely a God thing. The rural communities have a lot of issues, the poverty, the lack of transportation. I'm glad to say the infrastructure is getting better. A lot of these places now have electricity. When I was there in 2014, unless you had a generator, there was no electricity. Some houses have running water. You can see they have a well, and then the water would be piped into the houses from the well. That well serves the whole community. And again, the wells are a huge project the church has been doing. You'll notice that is covered. Their wells used to be just a hole in the ground. And some communities still just have the hole in the ground. Well, the problem with that is you get debris in it, you get dead animals in it. When it rains, it gets contaminated. Yeah, so that's a whole lot better than what's going on there. The church supports this community 100%. They are so poor, they can't hardly even give anything. They donate chemicals and fertilizers to the family to help them grow crops. There are 4 wells. And they're working on the irrigation system, but again, it's so dry, I don't know it's going to work. During the 2 driest months, even with 4 wells, there's not enough water to help everybody. They also have what's called health promoters, and all of these communities have health promoters, and that's 4 to 6 people that are trained in basic first aid and hygiene and things like that to help people learn how to stay healthy. And the church trains them and provides first aid kits for them. Next slide. Los Carbonero was our next community. This particular community, and a lot of them were refugees from Honduras. And they came up into the mountains and started their small communities. There it is. They also have a seed bank. The families have, call it a manzana. It's about 1.8 acres, lots. Some of them have a couple. Again, the church supports this community. They also have a well. We were worshiping in their church area. I think they built that building out of their funds as well. The church probably helped with it. They do the laying eggs and their harvest. Then next one, San Luis. We didn't get to see all of them, San Luis, but we got to see a few of them. This is one of their larger rural communities. And they served us lunch. They have gardens and greenhouse and irrigation system. They don't do the laying hens, they do hens for meat instead. That project was started by a grant from the church, who gave a grant to the woman who owns this house. Here, she's down here in the corner with, I wanted to show her kitchen because it was such a nice kitchen. It's separate from the house. And she raises chickens for meat through this I can't say it, the business grant, small business grant. They also have irrigation and vegetable gardens, a collective who does crops down by the river. Yeah. Some quotes while we were there, because everybody had a chance to talk. Being Lutheran means inviting others to the table. We show our work by sharing with those in need and teaching others the importance of sharing. One woman said, "We have received and so we give." Another, "For us, the church is a show of love. The accompaniment is priceless. In the hurricanes, the church was the first one to check on them. I'm grateful that we have a church that cares." Gender and justice are very important to these communities. Many women are affected by violence in their homes. The church teaches gender justice and nonviolence. It helps. It's getting better. The machismo, Latin American machismo thing, where the man is the absolute ruler of the home, is very strong. But they're working on some independence for the women. Next slide. Some things never change. We got fed everywhere we went. Coffee and cake after worship. I actually tried to make this cake for you. It did not turn out. So I wasn't going to suffer the bad cake with you. Apparently, you've heard the saying, mi casa is su casa. Apparently that's a real thing. That's not just a saying, that's a thing. Every place we went, we were welcomed in, and the host said, "My house is your house. When you are here, you are at home." In El Rancho, they just finished the baking for the day, so I didn't get to show the oven in action. They have a large community oven rather than the small home oven. But we got to sample the results. It was so good. And I got an offer to come and stay for about a month so they can teach me how to cook Nicaraguan right. So just saying. The projects. Let's talk a little bit more about the projects that they have going on. Of course, there's always wells and latrines, seed banks, that's always going. But we have the Laying Hens project. These women have 58 hens. They get about 54 eggs a day from their 58 hens. They are super producers. Helping Kids Round First actually started the project. The first coops that they gave didn't work in their environment. The chickens got too stressed in it, so they built them bigger coops and chicken wires. But a lot of the communities have laying hens. They primarily go to feed their families. The communities always donate some. This particular community donates to a local kindergarten, so the kids in the school have something to eat. They sell them at a discount to their community members, and then they sell them in the market in Somoto, and they make money from doing that. It gives them financial independence, and they know they can feed their kids. And these women are so proud of their hard work and being able to support their families. Next project. The irrigation project. This down here in this corner is a field that's just getting ready to be planted, and so they have these irrigation lines. The wells are usually up on hills, so it's gravity fed, but they do have an electric pump with solar panels to run that. You can barely see the irrigation line in the top picture on the side. That's cornfield that had just been harvested. And they plant sorghum. Beans, sorghum, corn, occasionally yucca is primarily what they plant in the irrigated fields. These gentlemen they've combined their land together. They've got it all irrigated. They're standing in front of one of the water tanks. The well's on the top of the hill, but they have water tanks there too. And then the irrigation runs out of that water tank through the fields. Next one. Then there are the community gardens and the greenhouses, and those can look like full greenhouses or just a small spot or even just outdoors. The greenhouses are to provide nutritional diversity. When I first went, I was told you're going to be eating corn beans and rice beans and corn tortillas, and she was not wrong. That's the bulk of their diet, and you might get a little piece of chicken, no vegetables, okay? So they've been working on nutritional diversity to get more plants. So they grow things like peppers, tomatoes, onions, watermelon, cucumbers, cantaloupe. These people were so happy to see us, to show us their projects and how hard they're working. Most of the people that work in these projects are Lutheran, but that's not a requirement. The goal is to build capacity in the community so people can solve their own problems, and the projects are developed according to the needs of the community. In Somatillo and Somoto, they're in a dry path. There's not natural water resources. They don't get a lot of rain, so irrigation is a high process. And it's a hard choice because they have to decide between the poor and the most poor. So they identify groups that have what they call a major vulnerability: single mothers, the elderly, a large number of kids. And with the leaders of the community, they make the decision, and the lay pastors have a vital role in that, on whether or not they're going to put in the effort. And they have a lot of skin in the game. They may not have resources in, but they have a lot of skin in the game, as they have to come to all the training before the projects were approved. Once they have the resources and the training, then they can start developing additional projects. They have to be really well organized, and the lay pastors do a lot of that. And they coordinate with the central church to let them know what's going on. The church, and they make contingency plans. The church showed up to deliver what they were told they needed: 20 food packs. They showed up, and there were 40 families waiting for food. And they're like, we don't have that much. And then the community was like, we're fine. We've already figured out how we're sharing the food you brought, so everybody has something. Very, very communal. Okay, so Somoto was the main town. Next one. We didn't get to worship with them because they worship on Thursday, I think, Saturday. But we hung out here a little bit. I said I had to go all the way to Nicaragua to meet Craig from Helping Kids Round First, because he was there dropping off baseball equipment. And they'll distribute as needed. He says a load takes 18 months from him collecting it to getting it to a drop-off at a place like Somoto. And this man is absolutely crazy. He left Managua in the morning, drove all over Somoto all day, and it took us like 3 hours to get from Managua to Somoto because the roads are steep and winding with lots of traffic. He left early in the morning, all day, dropped this off at like 7 o'clock at night, was taking the drive back to Managua because the next day he had to be in the southern part of Nicaragua. Just a crazy man, but passionate and dedicated. Yeah. Our work, our work is the good news to the ears, and God's work is the good news to the heart. They have that sign in it. That's what that sign says, and they have it in every congregation. Next slide, please. We met our host families here. Mine was Domingo, that's the gentleman there, and his family, Aloxadora and Alec. They didn't speak any English. I don't speak any Spanish, Google Translate's a wonderful thing. We spent a lot of evenings with Google Translate. They laughed at my pronunciation when I would try to read what Google Translate told me I needed. Just a really nice time. I was surprised, though, in Somoto that they are still having water issues in the main city. When I was there in 2017, the city had grown so fast that they have outstripped their water supply. And so we had to do bucket dumps to flush the toilets. and there's a big 55-gallon drum with water in it for our showers. We were good the first day I was there, but the second day I got up and they said, no agua. I'm like, go in there and there's the bucket, there's the tub, so yeah. I was surprised they haven't fixed that, but it's still growing so fast because the people in the poor areas are moving in. Okay, next slide. Our camp, next slide please. Our camp is Cedro Galan. This is where the church actually started. I think it's about 14 acres. They used to farm the land. They now rent that out. They used to have coffee. They don't do that anymore. The climate is not right for coffee. But it's still a crucial, crucial facility. And I want to talk just really quickly about a project we did in like 2016 or so. You might remember we were raising funds to improve Cedro Galan. I want you to see the difference. Next slide. When I was there in 2014, this was the main building. We stayed in a smaller side building, but this is when they have camps. Behind those gated doors would be bunk rooms. Their kitchen's that yellow area off to the corner. Next slide. Same patio. Next slide. This, I want you to look at, it's part of their kitchen. You see there's a stove there. But the main thing, those were their showers. They sadly needed upgraded. Next slide. The whole area was upgraded. They have I didn't take pictures of the showers. They have lovely indoor showers. The bunk rooms got an upgrade. Funny enough, they still have to have a latrine outside because some of the people from the country will not use the indoor plumbing. Next slide. And that horrible kitchen that had that little tiny stove and that chest freezer which served as a refrigerator because it didn't freeze no more. And we had to wash dishes outside. I don't know what happened to the picture of me washing dishes because there was one. Next slide. The new kitchen. It is amazing. And I want to thank you all for any donations you did to that project. But this is a sample of some of the stuff that we do. They identified a need for this to be updated and made better. They use this all the time. This is where their camp takes place in the summer, 2 weeks, their youth camp. Every month their pastors come in from the communities. They stay. They have training. Children's programming happens there. Just all kinds of other events. It is a farm, so if they have a new agricultural program going, they test it out first at Cedro Galan to make sure it's going to work before they take it out into the communities, like what they did with the laying chickens. Sometimes the nursery for fruit trees and stuff, they were doing that as well. Finally, another project we have going, next slide please, is Poco Guape. This is their school. School runs February to November, so we didn't get to see the big kids because they hadn't started yet, but the preschool had just started. I believe it was the first day of preschool when we were there. So they have about 20 to 30 little ones, 3 through kindergarten that come into the preschool. They meet in the morning, the older kids in the afternoon. Next slide. They get a meal. Sometimes this meal that they get at the school is the only meal the kids get all day. You see those bags there? The whole edge of 3 walls of the main classroom where the little ones meet had bags of oatmeal, rice, beans, masa. I think that was everything. Yeah, well, it's a mixed cereal oatmeal for lunch. The government provides that. They don't have a kitchen, so the family members take turns making the meals. They add a little something to supplement it. Sometimes it's meat, sometimes it's fruit, it's just whatever the family has. This is in one of the poorest parts of Managua. They really don't have hardly anything. But then they get to eat. They told me a story of one little girl they noticed was not eating her lunch, and she was taking it home every day. Come to find out that she had her father and a couple little younger siblings at home. If she didn't take her lunch home to share with them, they didn't eat. So she wouldn't eat so she could share with them. So they started giving her extra food so she could eat at school and then go home and share. Next slide. Then they have another building there on the bottom that has classrooms, and those are a sample of what the classrooms look like. They can have anywhere from 10 to 30 students in one of those classrooms. Yes, 30 students in one of those classrooms. I cannot imagine. For second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. Now, the fifth and sixth grade classes get really small because people drop out because they have to go to work. And then the first grade is in, no, I think it's third, fourth, fifth, and sixth in those, and the first and second are in the other building. Next slide. This is their playground over here. I don't know how well you can see it, but that's a swing set. There's nothing on it, but that's a swing set. That's their playground. One of their goals is to someday build a nicer playground. Now, what they did do, which was so nice because it used to be completely separate from the building and very run down, is this light blue building here. Those are the boys and girls' bathrooms. The parents built that. So, next slide. One of their issues, and someday they would like to have a community garden for the parents and buy a kitchen, and they have this plot of land behind the school that they want to do that on, but it is a dream. They can't do it yet, and the reason is, next slide, their fence doesn't go all the way around. You can see they've got posts, but it stops there and goes all the way to the corner, and then from the corner, it goes all the way over. So it's about a fourth of the fence that needs to be done yet. We are trying to get bids on that so we can see if we can fund that fence, because they need the fence just to keep the kids safe, but also once it's fenced, they can start the community garden because they don't have to worry about other people coming in and stealing their produce. And they can start working on a better playground because they don't have to worry about it getting damaged. Okay. Next slide. So the church's ministry is holistic. It's body and spirit, word and sacrament. They say they believe the ministry is to see the human as a whole spiritual and physical being together, and in the communities, the pastoral care and the diaconia work very well together. They currently have funds for one more well, but it's very expensive. They are currently funding the Health Promoters Program, but that grant will run out in a year or two. It's a challenge to keep the school open. There are 9 teachers, and they struggle to pay them. On the pastoral care side, the main issue is paying the pastors, and they don't actually pay their pastors. They get a stipend. It's about $100 a month. They're vocational, but some of these pastors have 5, 6 congregations. When we asked what the top 3 funding priorities were, they said pastor salaries, school salaries and building the fence, and food security. Anything that helps them water, food, family gardens. But they really miss having us come. Everyone who has helped with the delegation enjoys the experience. They love spending the time with us, living life together with us. So between the death of Christ and the last day, it is only by gracious anticipation of the last things that Christians are privileged to live in individual fellowship with other Christians. It's by the grace of God that a congregation is permitted to gather visibly in this world to share God's word and sacrament. Not all Christians receive this blessing. The imprisoned, the sick, the scattered, lonely, the proclaimers of the gospel in heathen lands stand alone. They know that visible fellowship is a blessing. That's what we do. You might have a project if you decide to go to Nicaragua. You might not. Your project might just be building relationships. And make no mistake, no matter what you do, whether you're helping run a VBS or building something or whatever, the main thing you're building is relationships, and that's what they want. I had one of their lay pastors tell me that they get so encouraged that just to know that we love them enough and care for them enough to come and be with them, because they feel very alone. They're a very small Lutheran denomination. They feel they're alone in the world and they need us. And Bishop Victoria actually chewed us out a little bit because we haven't been there in 4 years. You know, why haven't you come back? They miss us and they want us. So, I probably won't go next year, but I will be taking another delegation. If you're interested, let me know. There are other delegations that we're going that we could plug you into if you don't want to wait a whole year. If you have any other questions, and I've got way more material than I covered, ask me. Thank you for staying and letting me share a little bit of my visit. Oh, I should probably tell you, red dress is Pastor Soliette. The plaid shirt is Dale Sanderson. He is the pastor over at Coleman. Then, of course, me. The tall guy with the goofy grin is Pastor Michael Jordan at Trinity Yankton. And then the other gentleman is Chuck Storm from Mitchell. And he was our Companion Synod Committee chairperson until just recently. And then Bishop Victoria is the short one in the center. And she is actually Pastor Cadia's mother and Pastor Soliet's grandmother. So, just interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, they're too far apart and too hard to get there. So they take turns. So the next delegation that goes will go to some delegation that that goes to Managua. Fly into Managua, we usually spend a day or so there, go out in the villages, we can spend 2 days in the villages,